The memory burns even now. I can still feel the torn silk of my prom dress, a delicate ivory masterpiece I'd saved up for months to buy. I clutched the fabric in my fist as if I could somehow squeeze the stain out, reverse time, stop the crimson punch from spreading across the bodice like a fatal wound. My twin sister, Melody, stood a few feet away, her pretty face a mask of theatrical horror, fat crocodile tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh my God, Lily, I'm so sorry," she wailed, her voice echoing in the pristine kitchen. My hand just slipped. Our parents, of course, rushed to her side. Not mine, never mine. They cooed and comforted Melody, who was just so clumsy and felt so terrible. I just stood there, dripping cherry red humiliation onto the white marble floor, a forgotten statue in the middle of their family drama. That was the night in my first life that I truly understood my place. I was the spare twin, the placeholder, the rough draft. Nothing I had, nothing I treasured, was ever truly safe from the gravitational pull of Melody's wants. The humiliation didn't end in the kitchen. It carved itself into my soul an hour later when I watched from my bedroom window as my crush, the impossibly handsome Daniel Stevens, picked Melody up for prom. She was wearing her backup dress, a shimmering silver number that sparkled under the porch light. He didn't even ask where I was. Why would he? I was invisible, forgotten, sitting at home in my ruined dream while they danced under gymnasium lights. The prom dress wasn't an isolated incident. It was the opening salvo in a war I didn't even know was being waged against me. Looking back from the vantage point of a second life, the pattern is so laughably, painfully obvious. Melody was a master of systematic destruction, a domestic terrorist in lip gloss and designer jeans. She didn't just ruin my prom, she systematically dismantled every milestone I ever reached for. That acceptance letter from Harvard, the one I'd worked my entire high school career for, she stole it from the mailbox, and when I frantically called the admissions office, she'd already called them herself, posing as me, and declined the offer. My parents naturally believed her when she said I'd been lying about getting in at all, that I was just making it up for attention. When I made the varsity tennis team, a feat she'd failed to achieve, she convinced our parents I was on academic probation and had lied about my eligibility. They made me quit. The ultimate betrayal came when I was 22. I'd scraped my way through a state college, fighting for every grade, and managed to land an interview for a junior associate position at our father's prestigious law firm. It was my one chance to finally prove my worth to him. I spent a week perfecting my portfolio, a collection of my best legal analyses and essays. The morning of the interview, Melody wished me luck with a hug that felt like a snake coiling around my ribs. I walked into that boardroom, confident for the first time in my life, and handed over my portfolio. The senior partner opened it to find 20 pages of blank paper. Melody had switched them. I was escorted out by security, my father's face a thundercloud of fury and embarrassment. I died a year later, at 23. A stupid, meaningless car accident on a rainy Tuesday. My last thoughts were of bitterness and defeat, a lifetime of being second best, of being sabotaged by the one person who shared my face. I never understood why. Why the silent, relentless war? I closed my eyes on a world that had never truly seen me, a ghost in my own life. Then I jolted awake. Not in a hospital, not in some ethereal waiting room. I was in my childhood bedroom, staring at the faded butterfly wallpaper I hadn't seen in a decade. The air smelled of mom's vanilla candles and teenage angst. My body felt lighter, younger. I scrambled out of bed and stared into the full-length mirror on my closet door. A 17-year-old face stared back. My face. Before the bitterness had etched permanent lines around my eyes, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. An old model, one I'd forgotten existed. I picked it up, my fingers clumsy with shock. A text message glowed on the screen. Sarah. OMG. You ready to go prom dress shopping on Sat? I saw the most gorgeous dress for you at Serendipity. The date on the screen was April 14th, 2 weeks before prom, one day before the punch incident. A slow, cold certainty washed over me, so potent it made my knees weak. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a hallucination. I had been given a second chance. And this time, I wouldn't be the naive, trusting twin who let her life be torn apart at the seams. This time, I knew all their secrets. And I had a secret of my own that was about to shatter their perfectly curated world into a million pieces. Because they didn't know what I'd discovered in those last desperate weeks of my first life. After the portfolio incident, I'd been adrift, broken. I'd retreated to our grandmother's old house, the one place Melody never bothered with. Rummaging through the attic, searching for some connection to a past where I might have mattered, I found a locked chest. As inside, buried beneath yellowed linens, was a set of documents. Legal papers, birth certificates, a frantic exchange of letters between my grandmother and a lawyer. The truth was a punch to the gut far worse than any spilled drink. I wasn't just a twin. I was born first, a full 7 minutes before a stillborn sister. My parents, desperate for the perfect pair they'd always dreamed of, had adopted another newborn baby from the same hospital that very day, a little girl whose mother had given her up. That baby was Melody. They forged the documents, paid off the right people, and raised us as biological twins. But the most important document was my grandmother's will. As the firstborn, legitimate daughter of her only son, I was the sole heir to her entire estate, the Blackwood Textile Empire, a corporation worth a staggering $3 billion. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Melody had spent her entire life trying to steal my little scraps of happiness, my small victories, my $500 prom dress. She'd played the princess in our little suburban kingdom, completely unaware that I was the one who had already been crowned queen. This time, I wouldn't just be avoiding her traps. I'd be setting my own. This time, I would claim my throne. The family dinner dynamic was a masterclass in psychological warfare that I was now, finally, equipped to appreciate. It was like watching a rerun of a show you hated, but this time you had the director's commentary. "Lily, dear, you're looking a little pale," Mother said, her voice dripping with that cloying, superficial concern she mistook for affection. She slid a plate in front of me. On it sat the sad, burnt edges of the roast beef, dry and curling up at the sides. Across the table, a perfectly rosy, thick-cut slice was placed in front of Melody. "Eat up," Mother chirped at her. "You need your strength for everything." Father, already halfway through his first glass of expensive Cabernet, lifted a piece of paper from the side table. It was a watercolor painting of a lopsided bowl of fruit, the kind of thing you'd see pinned to a refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a smiling sun. "Melody, this is just wonderful," he boomed, his voice thick with unearned pride. "You have such a natural, raw talent. We should get this framed." Melody preened, "Oh, Daddy, it's nothing, just a little something I whipped up." My own news, my acceptance letter to a prestigious summer art intensive in Florence, a real one this time, which I'd already secured online, and had the confirmation emails safely backed up in a cloud they'd never find, sat folded in my pocket. In my first life, I would have desperately tried to bring it up, only to be shut down or ignored. Tonight, I just smiled, a serene, knowing little smile, as my fork scraped against the porcelain. "It's lovely, Mel," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "The banana really captures a certain existential despair." Melody's smile faltered for a second. Father grunted, not really listening, but Mother shot me a sharp look. The script had been deviated from. I was supposed to be sullen and silent, not sarcastic and serene. I savored their predictability. Every casual slight, every blatant act of favoritism was no longer a fresh wound. It was data. It was fuel. I watched them orbit around Melody, the sun in their tiny, pathetic solar system, and felt nothing but the cold, satisfying click of a plan falling into place. They were so busy tending to their perfect, blossoming flower, they had no idea they were watering a time bomb. My best friend, Sarah, was a different kind of villain. Her poison was subtle, dripped into your ear under the guise of sisterly advice. We sat in our usual booth at the Daily Grind, a coffee shop that smelled of burnt beans and shattered dreams. Bitter espresso, bitter agenda. Steam rose from our mugs like smoke signals for a war only I knew was coming. "You know," she began, her eyes glinting as she stirred a mountain of sugar into her latte. That locket is just so beautiful. She nodded towards the antique silver locket around my neck, the one my true grandmother, Eleanor Blackwood, had left me. It was the only thing of real value I owned, or so I thought in my first life. Melody would just die to wear it for prom. You should really let her borrow it. It would match her silver dress perfectly. First life Lily would have been torn. I would have felt the pressure, the guilt, the desire to be a good sister and a good friend. I would have eventually caved, and the locket would have mysteriously gone missing after prom, only to be found months later in Melody's jewelry box, its clasp broken. Second life, Lily just smiled. Oh, I don't think so. It's a family heirloom. Very delicate. Sarah's brow furrowed. This wasn't the response she was programmed to receive. Oh, come on, Lily. Don't be selfish. It's just one night. It would make her so happy. I took a slow sip of my Americano, letting the bitterness wash over my tongue. I watched her. Really watched her this time. I saw the way her eyes darted towards her phone, probably to text Melody an update. I saw the faint, predatory smile she couldn't quite suppress. In my first life, I'd trusted her with every secret, every insecurity. I saw her now for what she was, a paid informant, a saboteur for hire, undermining my confidence with the surgical precision of a concerned friend. She wasn't a friend. She was Melody's spy. Selfish is an interesting word, isn't it? I mused, placing my cup down with a soft click. It gets thrown around a lot, usually by people who want something they haven't earned. Sarah blinked, completely thrown. I just mean... I know what you mean, I said, my smile never wavering. And the answer is no. Now, did you see what happened in Mr. Henderson's class today? Classic. I changed the subject, leaving her floundering. The master class in betrayal was now in session, and I was the professor. Then there was Daniel, my brilliant, beautiful basketball captain crush. His laugh echoed across the school courtyard, a sound I used to think was musical, but now recognized as hollow. He was leaning against a locker, a girl on either side of him. One of them was my sister Melody. The other was, well, he probably thought it was me. He was one of those guys who flirted with both of us, enjoying the cheap thrill of playing the identical twins against each other. His cologne, a scent I used to find intoxicating, now just smelled expensive and cloying. It was the smell of shallow promises. I remembered, with a nauseating lurch, how he'd whispered those promises to me behind the bleachers, telling me I was the deep, mysterious one, while he was simultaneously texting Melody about being his prom queen. He wasn't interested in me or her. He was interested in the social capital that came with dating one of the perfect twins. He spotted me walking past, his green eyes, which I once thought were the color of summer, now just looked calculating. He was doing the math, weighing the odds. Which twin would get him a better spot at the popular kids' table? Lily! Hey! He called out, detaching himself from Melody with a casual arm squeeze. He jogged over, his varsity jacket practically screaming his own importance. We were just talking about prom. It's going to be epic. I'm sure it will be, I said, my tone flat. So, you got your dress yet? He asked, leaning in conspiratorially. Because I was thinking, maybe you and I... The old me would have melted, my heart would have been doing the Macarena, the new me felt a profound sense of boredom. He was a beautiful, predictable, two-dimensional character in a play I'd already seen. Daniel, I said, stopping and looking him directly in the eye. Let me save you some time. You're going to weigh your options. You'll keep flirting with me to keep Melody on her toes, and you'll keep flirting with Melody to make sure you have a backup. In the end, you'll ask whichever one of us you think will benefit you the most, probably at the last possible minute. It's a solid strategy, a little transparent, but solid. His jaw hung open. The charming smile evaporated, replaced by stunned confusion. What? Just a thought, I said with a shrug, and walked away, leaving him standing there like a statue. The obsession I'd carried for years had vanished, replaced by the crystal-clear vision of a boy who saw people as accessories. And finally, there was Melody herself. My creator, my destroyer, my twin. I walked past our shared bathroom to see her standing in front of the mirror, not practicing her makeup, but her prom queen acceptance speech. Her reflection, so eerily like my own, was twisted with an ambition I had been fatally blind to before. I am so incredibly humbled, she said to her own reflection, her voice trembling with expertly faked emotion. To be chosen as your prom queen is the greatest honor. I promise to serve the entire student body, to be a voice for everyone, to make this school a place where we all feel. She paused, searching for the perfect word. Seen. The irony was so potent, it almost made me laugh out loud. Melody, making people feel seen. She wouldn't know how to do that unless it was through the lens of a camera she was using to incriminate them. She hummed a little tune as she opened her jewelry box, arranging and rearranging the contents. I knew what she was doing. She was taking inventory, planning which of my things she would borrow without asking, which pieces would mysteriously vanish. The evening light streamed through the window, catching the blonde highlights in her hair and making her look like an angel. An angel. Angels don't systematically destroy their sisters' lives with such cold, methodical precision. Angels don't rehearse humility in a mirror. But queens? Queens do whatever it takes to protect their kingdoms. And looking at her then, so blissfully unaware of the storm that was coming, I felt a strange, dark pity. She was playing checkers in a sandbox, while I was about to overturn the entire chessboard. Her perfect mask was about to crack, and I was going to be there to watch every piece fall. The Saturday of the prom dress incident arrived, cloaked in a chilling sense of déjà vu. I'd gone shopping with Sarah, a performance piece really, and picked out a stunning sapphire blue gown. It was slinky, elegant, and completely different from the innocent ivory dress of my first life. I wanted the canvas for the crime to be different, even if the crime itself was destined to be the same. I stood in the kitchen, a glass of water in my hand, waiting. I had a tiny, state-of-the-art spy camera, the size of a shirt button, nestled in the faux ficus plant on the kitchen counter. It had a perfect wide-angle view of the entire room. I'd spent an hour that morning getting the position just right. Right on schedule, Melody pranced in, holding a glass filled to the brim with bright red punch. Her eyes, for a split second, flicked towards the corner where our parents were in the living room, their backs to the kitchen as they watched some golf tournament on TV. She saw they weren't looking. She turned to me. "Oh, Lily, I love that dress on you. You have to try it on for Mom and Dad," she gushed, her voice oozing saccharine sweetness. "I was just about to," I said, my heart a steady, rhythmic drum. Showtime. I turned as if to head towards the living room, placing myself directly in her path. This was the moment. I could feel the energy in the room shift. It was the subtle tightening of her grip on the glass, the almost imperceptible narrowing of her eyes. "Oops!" Her voice was a perfect symphony of manufactured shock. The red punch arched through the air in a beautiful, horrifyingly familiar trajectory, splashing directly onto the front of my sapphire blue dress. The dark blue fabric instantly turned a deep, bruised purple where the sticky liquid soaked in. Crimson droplets fell like tears onto the white marble floor. It was a perfect reenactment, a masterpiece of sabotage. My mother rushed in, her face a mask of concern for the perpetrator, of course. "Melody! Oh, honey, are you okay?" she cried, immediately wrapping my sister in a comforting hug. "It was an accident, I swear!" Melody sobbed into Mom's shoulder, her performance so convincing it deserved an Academy Award. "My hand just slipped. I feel so awful." Dad appeared in the doorway, scowling. "What's all the commotion? Melody, what's wrong?" He saw the scene, his eyes landing on me, the dripping victim, and then softening as he looked at his crying, clumsy daughter. This time, I didn't just stand there in silent, broken shock. This time, I had a script. This time, I smiled internally. Because this time, I had her. The little red light on the camera in the ficus plant was my silent witness. I let my shoulders slump, my face fall. I looked down at the ruined dress, the dress I had supposedly just spent my savings on, and let out a small, broken sound. It's fine," I whispered, carefully pitching my voice to be a perfect blend of devastation and resignation. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just let a single perfect tear trace a path down my cheek. It was a more powerful performance than Melody's histrionics. It made me the martyr. "Oh, Lily, honey," Mom said, finally turning her attention to me, though her arm was still wrapped around Melody. "It's just a dress. We can try to get the stain out." "I'm so sorry," Melody whimpered, peeking at me over Mom's shoulder, her eyes wide and wet. It was a brilliant touch. "It's okay, Mel," I said, my voice barely audible. "It was an accident." I turned and walked slowly out of the kitchen, head bowed, playing the part of the defeated victim they all expected me to be. I heard my father behind me, his voice low and comforting. "It's all right, sweetheart. Don't you worry. Your sister, she knows it wasn't your fault." He was talking to Melody. Of course he was. I retreated to my room and closed the door, the sound of their gentle cooing fading away. The moment the latch clicked, the mask of despair fell from my face, replaced by a grin so wide it felt like it might split my cheeks. I sat down at my desk, pulled out my laptop, and with a few keystrokes, connected to the spy camera's wireless feed. There it was. Crystal clear, high-definition footage of the entire event. I transferred the video file to my computer, my hands moving with practiced ease. In my first life, I'd eventually channeled my frustration into learning practical skills. I'd become a surprisingly adept video editor and had a decent understanding of social media algorithms, skills I'd picked up trying to build a freelance career after the firm fiasco. It was poetic, really. The very skills I'd learned out of desperation were now my weapons of war. I trimmed the clip, cutting right to the chase. The footage was damning. You could see Melody enter the kitchen, check to make sure our parents weren't looking, deliberately position herself, and then, with a clear, intentional movement, fling the punch. The instant the liquid left the glass, her face transformed from focused malice to performative shock. It was a Jekyll and Hyde transformation that took less than a millisecond. Perfect evidence for the perfect moment. I saved the final cut to 3 different secure cloud accounts and a password-protected hard drive hidden in a hollowed-out book. My little insurance policy. 3 days before the prom queen elections, the video appeared. I didn't post it myself, of course. That would be far too obvious. I used a VPN and a burner email account to send the video file to Gossip Gopher, the anonymous school social media account that thrived on scandal. The Gopher, predictably, posted it within minutes. The caption was simple. "Looks like some accidents are more accidental than others. #Melody exposed." I was in my bedroom, supposedly studying, when the first notifications started rolling in. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then began vibrating nonstop. I watched from the sidelines as the firestorm erupted. Within an hour, #Melody exposed was the #1 trending topic in our town. The clip, short and shocking, was everywhere. It was shared, retweeted, and commented on hundreds, then thousands of times. The mask was completely stripped away. Everyone at Northgate High saw her for what she was, a calculating, cruel manipulator. The comments were a revelation. "OMG, I knew it. She accidentally tripped me in the cafeteria last year and I broke my wrist. She accidentally told Mr. Collins that I cheated on the history midterm. I got a suspension. This girl is pure evil, her poor sister." Suddenly, I wasn't the invisible twin. I was the victim, the saint, the long-suffering sister of a sociopath. The narrative had been flipped with the click of a button. The scandal exploded beyond the school walls. A slow news day meant that a local news station, hungry for a bit of suburban drama, picked up the story. "The Perfect Twins' Dark Side," the headline blared on their website. Soon, a news van was parked across the street from our house. The sound of my bedroom door bursting open startled me, but I didn't look up from my chemistry textbook. "Lily!" Melody stood in the doorway, her face pale and blotchy, mascara streaking down her cheeks in greasy black rivers. Her phone was clutched in a trembling hand. The prom queen crown she had considered a divine right was slipping through her fingers like sand. "You have to help me," she begged, her voice cracking with a genuine terrified panic I had never, ever heard from her before. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. "You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you forgive me." Downstairs, I could hear Father's booming voice, laced with fury and anxiety, as he yelled at someone on the phone. His precious family reputation was taking a nosedive. Mother was probably in the kitchen, head in her hands, muttering about the sheer social embarrassment of it all. "Please," Melody whispered, taking a step into my room. Her eyes were wide, with a desperation that was utterly foreign to her. I'll do anything. Anything. I finally looked up from my book, a placid, slightly confused expression on my face. Help you with what, Mel? I asked, my voice the picture of innocence. Then I smiled, a slow, cold, triumphant smile. And I reached out and gently closed my bedroom door in her face. The prom dress scandal was merely the appetizer. The main course was yet to come, and I knew exactly what was on the menu: my future. Just as I'd predicted, a week after the Hash Melody exposed incident died down, the next phase of her desperate campaign began. I'd been checking the mail every day, but I let her get to it first on the day I knew my Harvard acceptance letter was scheduled to arrive. I watched from my window as she snatched the thick, crimson-trimmed envelope from the mailbox, a furtive, triumphant look on her face before she scurried inside. Later that evening, while she was in the shower, I staged my search. I went into her room under the guise of looking for a sweater I'd supposedly lent her. It took me less than 30 seconds to find the evidence. Tucked beneath her mattress like a dirty secret was my future, my Harvard acceptance letter torn neatly in half. She'd done it, the exact same move, the exact same pathetic, cruel act of sabotage. My heart hammered against my ribs, but this time it wasn't with the poison of helpless rage. It was the clean, powerful thrum of an engine roaring to life. She thought she was rewriting my story, erasing my greatest achievement. She had no idea I was already 3 chapters ahead, and I'd written her a truly tragic ending. I didn't touch the letter. I simply left it there, a piece of evidence waiting for its grand reveal. Of course, I had been prepared. The moment the official acceptance had appeared on my online portal weeks ago, I had screenshotted it, printed multiple copies of the official documentation, and placed them, along with notarized affidavits, in a safety deposit box at a bank downtown. I'd even managed to set up another hidden camera in the hallway, this one disguised as a smoke detector, and had perfectly clear footage of her sneaking into my room the night before to check if I'd received it, then her triumphant return from the mailbox today. She was a creature of habit, and her habits were about to hang her. At dinner that night, I deployed Act 2, the defeated sister. I let my food get cold, pushing it around my plate with a fork. I let my eyes well up with tears, my shoulders slumped in what looked like utter despair. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Mom asked, her voice still a little strained from the prom dress fiasco. They were treading on eggshells around me now, a fascinating new development. I just thought I would have heard from Harvard by now," I mumbled, letting my voice crack. "All my friends have heard back from their top choices." Melody, across the table, put on her best performance of sisterly concern. "Oh, Lily, don't worry. Maybe it just got lost in the mail. These things happen all the time." Her acting skills were truly polished from years of daily practice. She met my eyes, and for a second, I saw a flicker of her true gloating self. "I was just so sure," I whispered, burying my face in my hands. "I really thought I got in." "Well, maybe you were mistaken," Father said, his tone laced with that familiar, dismissive edge. He wanted to believe the simple explanation, the one that didn't involve his perfect daughter being a monster. "It's Harvard, after all. The competition is incredibly fierce." "I'll call the admissions office for you tomorrow, darling," he promised, but it was a hollow gesture. He thought he was managing my disappointment, my delusion. I played the part of crushed dreams to perfection. I cried myself to sleep, or at least, I made sure they heard my muffled sobs through the bedroom wall. But behind my closed door, I was on my laptop, not crying, but planning. I was mentally scripting the press conference that would detonate their lives. Their pity, which used to feel like acid, now tasted like honey on my tongue. Sweet, cloying, and soon to be poisonous for them. The next morning, I didn't wait for my father's half-hearted phone call. I made one of my own. I took a portion of the seed money from the trust fund my grandmother had secretly set up for me, a fund they knew nothing about, and hired the best private investigator in the state, a man named Mr. Graves, a former FBI agent with a reputation for being as discreet as he was relentless. The money, which felt like a superpower, worked wonders. Mr. Graves and his team were ruthlessly efficient. Within a single week, they had uncovered not just this incident, but Melody's entire, years-long pattern of sabotage. It was more extensive than even I had realized. He found the postal worker she'd bribed with a $100 bill to hand over my Harvard letter. He recovered deleted emails from the school server where she, posing as a guidance counselor, had sent negative reports about me to other colleges. He had forged documents, witness testimonies from other students she'd wronged, and a complete financial trail showing payments to Sarah for information. Sarah. The investigation revealed she'd been on Melody's payroll for years, receiving a monthly allowance in exchange for detailed reports on my life, my hopes, my fears, my passwords. Every secret I'd ever confided in her had been sold for the price of a few shopping sprees. I sat in Mr. Graves's office, a sleek, modern space that smelled of leather and justice, and reviewed the file. It was a thick, heavy binder filled with photographs, bank statements, and signed affidavits. It was the story of my first life told in the cold, hard language of evidence. We, along with a shark of a lawyer Mr. Graves had recommended, prepared a case that would do more than just expose Melody. It would unravel the very fabric of my family's carefully constructed life. The story didn't just leak this time, it broke like a dam. We didn't go to the local news. My lawyer, a media-savvy woman named Miss Albright, arranged an exclusive with a national news network. It was a primetime special report, Poison Ivy League, a twin sisters' years-long campaign of deception and sabotage exposed. The segment was a masterpiece of destruction. It opened with the high-definition footage of Melody stealing my mail. It cut to the interview with the remorseful postal worker. It showed screenshots of the deleted emails and the forged documents. And then, the pièce de résistance, hidden camera footage from the PI showing Sarah meeting Melody in a parking lot, handing over a notebook, and receiving a wad of cash. It even included an audio recording Daniel had drunkenly made at a party, which Mr. Graves's team had acquired, where he laughed about how he was playing both of the dumb twins to see which one would get him a better graduation gift. Our house, which had seen a single news van for the prom dress story, now looked like the scene of a celebrity arrest. It was a full-blown circus of national media reporters, camera crews, and even a few protesters holding signs that said "Justice for Lily." The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Melody locked herself in her room, and through the door, I could hear her hysterical sobs as emails began pouring in. Her acceptances to Duke, to Georgetown, to every school she'd applied to, were rescinded one by one. The national scandal made her toxic. Mother's high society friends suddenly stopped returning her calls. The charity boards she sat on requested her immediate resignation. Father's business partners started calling, their voices cold and distant, demanding to know how this scandal would affect their investments. I watched it all unfold from my bedroom window, sipping a cup of chamomile tea. The world they had built on a foundation of lies and my own silent suffering was crumbling to dust. It was a hurricane, and I was the storm. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. With her future in ashes and her reputation annihilated, Melody had nothing left to lose. And so, she made one final desperate play for survival. It was her most audacious move yet, an attempt to paint me not as the victim, but as the villain. I had recently started dating a boy named Marcus. He was kind, smart, and refreshingly normal. He was from a different school, blissfully unaware of the drama at Northgate High until the news broke. I'd started seeing him partly because I genuinely liked him, and partly to present the image of a well-adjusted young woman moving on with her life. He was my island of sanity in a sea of chaos, and Melody saw him as her final weapon. Her plan was as desperate as it was cliché. She was going to seduce him, record it, and then claim that I, in a fit of jealous, unstable rage, had orchestrated the entire smear campaign against her. She would be the poor, innocent victim of a mentally unhinged sister, but she and everyone else had made a critical error in judgment. They had operated for years under the assumption that I was a fool. They never imagined that I would or could be a strategist. I knew she would try something like this. Her playbook was predictable. When a direct attack fails, attack the character of your opponent. So I had already brought Marcus into the loop. I told him everything. Not just about the recent events, but about my first life, the rebirth, the whole impossible, insane truth. I laid all my cards on the table, expecting him to run for the hills. He didn't. He just listened. his expression shifting from disbelief to a quiet, steady anger on my behalf. He believed me, and he agreed to help. The hidden cameras in my bedroom, upgraded and repositioned, were ready. The performance took place on a Thursday afternoon. I told everyone I was going to the library to study with Marcus. Instead, he came over, and we watched on my laptop from the kitchen as Melody let herself into my bedroom. She had put on my favorite blue sundress and a touch of my perfume. She was trying to become me. She texted Marcus from her phone. "Change of plans. Lily's not feeling well. Can you come to her room? The front door's unlocked." Minutes later, Marcus walked into the house, playing his part perfectly. He walked up the stairs and into my room, where Melody was waiting, perched on the edge of my bed. The audio feed was crystal clear. "Marcus," she breathed, her voice a sultry purr. "I'm so glad you came. I need to talk to you about Lily." She stood up and walked towards him, her movements calculatedly seductive. "She's not who you think she is. She's manipulative. She's been lying about everything." She reached out and placed a hand on his chest. "She's jealous of us," she whispered, leaning in closer. "I know you feel it too, this spark between us." I watched on the screen as she threw herself at him, her arms wrapping around his neck, trying to force a kiss, to create a scene of infidelity that would exonerate her. Her desperation was a tangible thing, reeking like cheap perfume in the air, but Marcus was ready. He gently but firmly pushed her away. At that exact moment, I walked in. My timing was, of course, impeccable. I stumbled backward theatrically, my hand flying to my chest. My face, which I had practiced in the mirror, was a perfect canvas of shock and heartbreak. "Melody? Marcus?" I whispered, my voice breaking with practiced perfection. What is going on?" Melody scrambled, her eyes wide with panic. The script had gone wrong. She had expected to be in control, to be the one revealing the scene. Instead, she was caught. "Lily, it's not what it looks like," she cried, instantly shifting into her victim mode. He came on to me. He said you sent him up here, that you were into weird games. I was just trying to protect you from him." The lie was audacious, even for her. It hung in the air between us, bitter and toxic. I could see her watching me, her mind racing, calculating whether I would buy this new, desperate performance. I let the tears fall. I looked from her to Marcus, the picture of a girl whose world had just been shattered. But this time, I didn't wait for the fallout. I didn't leak one video. I didn't give one interview. This time, I didn't just counterattack. I deployed the nuclear option. That night, my lawyer, Miss Albright, executed the checkmate move. It was a coordinated media blitz, surgical in its precision. We released everything, all at once, to every major news outlet in the country. First, the video of Melody attempting to seduce Marcus, followed immediately by Marcus's calm, clear-eyed testimony of how he'd been warned and had played along to expose her. Then came the rest, the high-definition footage of the prom dress incident, the video of her stealing my mail, the audio of Daniel's bragging, the PI's entire dossier, the bribed postal worker, the financial records of payments to Sarah, the forged college reports. We released sworn affidavits from a dozen other students from our high school, each detailing their own story of Melody's accidents and manipulations. We even released a preliminary financial audit from my grandmother's estate that hinted at decades of financial mismanagement by my father. The story exploded on a global scale. It wasn't just a local drama or a national scandal anymore. It was an international news event. "The twin who stole everything," one headline screamed. "Anatomy of a sociopath, how one sister systematically destroyed the other," read another. Documentary crews started calling Miss Albright's office within hours, drawn like moths to the flame of our shocking, sordid family tale. The collapse wasn't a slow crumble. It was an implosion. 72 hours was all it took for their world to end. Father's company, built on an image of integrity and family values, saw its stock plummet by 60%. Key investors pulled out, citing the reputational risk of being associated with him. He was forced to resign as CEO. Mother, once the queen bee of suburban society, was expelled from every charity board, her name removed from the plaques in the country club lobby. She was a pariah. Sarah, facing a mountain of evidence, was charged with conspiracy and fraud. Her family, mortified, hired a lawyer and prepared for a legal battle they were destined to lose. Daniel's basketball scholarship to his dream university was revoked. The college released a statement about upholding the character of their student athletes. He became a social outcast, the boy who laughed about playing the dumb twins. And Melody. Melody just sat in her bedroom, the door closed, surrounded by letters from lawyers, subpoenas, and the deafening silence of a life that had been reduced to rubble. They had all underestimated the quiet twin. They had poked the bear one too many times. They saw a sheep, a victim, a doormat. They never, ever imagined that I could orchestrate their complete and utter destruction with the cold, methodical precision of a master tactician. Their biggest mistake was assuming that, after a lifetime of being their victim, I would be their victim forever. The lawyer's office smelled of mahogany, old leather, and the sweet, sweet scent of victory. Miss Albright, a woman whose smile was as sharp as her legal mind, slid a final stack of papers across the polished table toward me. Just a few more signatures here, here, and here, she said, her pen tapping a line at the bottom of a page. And the transfer will be complete. I signed my name, my real name, with a steady hand. Liliana Blackwood. It felt like coming home. Congratulations, Miss Blackwood, Miss Albright said, using my true surname for the first time. Her smile was genuine now. Your grandmother's estate is now fully and legally transferred to your control. The Blackwood textile empire, the international real estate portfolio, the offshore accounts, all $3 billion of it. I stared down at the documents, at the bold official seals that legitimized the truth I'd stumbled upon in a dusty attic. I wasn't the spare. I wasn't the charity case they'd raised alongside their perfect daughter. I was the heir. The irony was so exquisite, it was almost painful. They had spent 2 decades fighting to keep me down, to steal my tiny slivers of success, all while I was sitting on an empire. They'd been fighting over the scraps from a table that belonged entirely to me. The power shift was unveiled not with a bang, but with the quiet click of a front door opening. I walked into our family home, or rather, my property, as a quick check of the deeds revealed the trust my grandmother had set up had secretly owned the house for decades. I wasn't wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I was wearing a tailored Chanel suit the color of ivory, my hair styled in a sleek, professional chignon. I looked every bit the CEO I now was. They were in the dining room. My father, looking 10 years older, was on the phone, likely begging a former colleague for a lifeline. My mother was staring blankly at the wall, her coffee untouched. Melody was there too, pale and thin, looking like a ghost haunting the scene of her own demise. My mother saw me first. Her coffee cup slipped from her grasp, shattering against the marble floor. The sound was a perfect metaphor for their lives. "Surprise," I said, my voice calm and even. I walked to the head of the table, to the chair that had always been my father's, and sat down. I placed my leather briefcase on the table and opened it, pulling out a thick file of legal documents. I spread them out like a feast of their own downfall. "I believe we have some things to discuss," I continued, my smile serene. "For instance, the fact that this house belongs to me, and the cars, and the company your father used to run. Grandmother Eleonora, it turns out, was a very clever woman. She left me everything. She knew the truth about my birth, about the adoption, about who the real Blackwood daughter is." The comprehension dawned on their faces, slow and horrifying. It was like watching the sun rise on their own personal apocalypse. And then, they fell apart. It was a spectacular, pathetic sight. Melody was the first to break. She slid from her chair and collapsed onto her knees, crawling towards me, her face a mess of tears and mascara. "Lily, I'm so sorry," she sobbed, the words empty and meaningless. "I was jealous. You were always better than me. You were smarter. You were more talented. You were everything I wasn't. I couldn't stand it. Please, please forgive me." Mother began wringing her hands, her voice a high, frantic whine. "We can fix this, Lily. We'll make it right. We'll issue a public apology, tell everyone how we favored her, how we neglected you. We can be a family again." Father, his face ashen, finally hung up the phone. The proud, booming man was gone, replaced by a crumbling edifice of a man. His shoulders slumped, as the full weight of his reality hit him. The daughter he had dismissed and belittled his entire life now owned him. His entire business empire belonged to me. The doorbell rang. It was Daniel, holding a bouquet of roses that were already starting to wilt in his sweaty, nervous palms. He'd probably been circling the block waiting for the right moment. "Lily," he said, his voice cracking. I just want you to know, it was always you. I was just confused. I've always loved you." Sarah had been calling nonstop for 2 days. Her voicemails, which I'd listened to with a detached sense of curiosity, had grown increasingly desperate, evolving from indignant anger to tearful begging apologies. I let them all perform. I listened to every plea, every excuse, every pathetic, self-serving promise with the serene, unbothered patience of a goddess watching mortals flail. The afternoon sun slanted through the crystal chandelier, a chandelier that was now mine, casting shimmering rainbow patterns across their tear-stained, desperate faces. When the cacophony of their begging finally died down, when they had exhausted their repertoire of lies and apologies, a heavy silence fell over the room. They all looked at me, their eyes wide with a desperate, hopeful plea. They had confessed. They had apologized. They had groveled. Now came the part where I was supposed to be the bigger person, to grant them the grace and forgiveness they had never once shown me. I stood up slowly, deliberately smoothing the front of my suit jacket. I looked at each of them in turn, my sobbing, kneeling sister, my frantic, bargaining mother, my broken, defeated father. I even glanced at the pathetic sight of Daniel in the doorway. And then I delivered my verdict. No. The word was quiet. It wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was simple, final, absolute. It fell between us like a judge's gavel, an anvil, a guillotine. I offered no explanation, no tirade about the years of pain they'd caused me, no lecture on justice versus forgiveness. Just that one single, beautiful word. The shock on their faces was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted. They had played their last card, the forgiveness card, and they had been so certain it would win. They had expected a scene, a fight, maybe even a reluctant truce. They never, in their wildest dreams, expected the cold, quiet finality of a closed door. They expected me to play the game. They didn't realize I had already won, and I was simply walking off the field. Some bridges, once you burn them down to the last ash, can never be rebuilt, and I had brought the gasoline. 2 years later, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse apartment in Malibu, a place so far removed from my old life it felt like another planet. A gentle salt breeze lifted the ends of my hair as I watched the Pacific waves crash against the rocks below. The sun was a fiery orange ball sinking into the endless blue, painting the sky in hues of gold and purple. I breathed in the clean, ocean air, and for the first time in either of my lives, it tasted of freedom. The Blackwood Empire, under my leadership, hadn't just survived. It had thrived. I had pivoted the century-old textile company toward a future of sustainability and ethical production. Our new line of eco-friendly fabrics and our transparent supply chain had revolutionized the fashion industry. The company's value had nearly tripled. I'd moved the headquarters to California, leaving the toxic memories and the gray skies of my former home behind for good. My apartment was a reflection of my new life. Minimalist, filled with light, original art that I loved, shelves overflowing with books I'd actually had time to read, and the quiet hum of a life built on my own terms. Marcus came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. Our relationship, forged in the fires of my bizarre revenge plot, had blossomed into something real and deeply honest. He knew every secret, every dark corner of my past, my rebirth, my retribution. He didn't love me in spite of it. He loved me because of the strength it had taken to survive it all. "You're glowing," he said, his voice a low rumble against my ear. He kissed my temple. "What are you thinking about?" "Dinner," I said, turning in his arms to face him. I was thinking about the garlic and herb pasta we're about to make and how good the kitchen smells. And it was true. My mind wasn't on the past. I was glowing with the simple, profound confidence of a person who had not just reclaimed her power, but had learned that real happiness wasn't something to be stolen or won. It was something to be built, one honest moment at a time. My greatest victory wasn't financial. It wasn't the fall of my former family. It was the Second Chances Foundation. I had used a significant portion of my newfound wealth to establish a nonprofit dedicated to providing legal resources, therapy, and safe housing for victims of familial abuse. My story, which I had shared on my own terms, had inspired thousands of people to come forward, to break free from their own toxic cycles, to recognize that their worth was not determined by the people who were supposed to love them. The foundation's headquarters, a beautiful, light-filled building overlooking a garden, hummed with a quiet sense of purpose. It was staffed by counselors, lawyers, and survivors who had become fierce advocates for others. Sometimes I'd watch from my office window as support groups gathered on the lawn below, people sharing their stories, finding strength in their shared experiences, and beginning the slow, difficult process of healing. That was my true empire. Not just escaping my own cage, but forging the keys for countless others. I never spoke to my former family again. After the finality of my refusal, they had faded from my life like a bad dream. I'd heard through the grapevine of lawyers and financial reports that they had sold what little they had left and moved to a small town in the Midwest. Father had taken a job as a paralegal. Mother worked in customer service. And Melody, I'd heard, was working part-time in retail while struggling through a few classes at a local community college. Sometimes in a fleeting, detached moment, I wondered if they ever truly understood what they had lost. Not the money, but the chance to have a daughter, a sister, who might have loved them. But mostly, I didn't think of them at all. The past was a book I had read, learned from, and then placed neatly on a shelf in the vast library of my memory. It was closed. Now I was writing new chapters. Chapters filled with business trips to Milan, with spontaneous weekend hikes in Big Sur with Marcus, with quiet evenings spent reading, with the laughter of friends who knew me simply as Lily. It was a life filled with the quiet, profound satisfaction of knowing that I hadn't won through cruelty, but through the simple, powerful act of refusing to remain a victim. The ocean stretched out before me, vast and limitless. The last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, and I smiled. I was finally, completely, peacefully free.